My buddy Ryan always bragged about Minnesota's trails, especially the ones near his cabin deep in the woods. He said the dawn light there was magical. So, last fall, I finally took him up on his offer. He woke me up way before sunrise, insisting the best views were right as the day broke. The air was sharp and cold, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. We set off, our headlamps cutting weak beams through the pre-dawn gloom. The trail was narrow, winding through thick stands of birch and pine. Ryan was a few paces ahead, his breath pluming in the cold air. For the first half hour, the only sounds were our footsteps crunching on fallen leaves and the distant call of an owl. It was peaceful, almost serene. But as the sky began to lighten from inky black to a deep, bruised purple, a strange feeling crept over me. A feeling of being watched. I shook it off, blaming the early hour and the unfamiliar woods. I called out to Ryan, "Hey, how much further to this amazing view?" He turned, a wide grin on his face. "Almost there, city boy." "Just past this next ridge." As he turned back, I saw it, just for a second, at the edge of my headlamp's beam. A figure, impossibly tall and gaunt, standing between two thick pine trees. It was there, and then it wasn't. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Ryan, did you see that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He stopped and looked back, his expression puzzled. "See? What a deer?" I described what I thought I saw. The unnerving height, the skeletal frame. Ryan laughed, but it sounded a little forced. "Dude, it's just the trees playing tricks on your eyes. The shadows get weird out here at this hour." He was probably right. I was tired, and my imagination was running wild. We kept walking, but the feeling of being watched intensified. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. The sky was brighter now, a palette of soft pinks and oranges filtering through the canopy. We reached a small clearing, and Ryan pointed. "See, told you it was worth it." The view was incredible. A valley blanketed in mist with the rising sun painting the horizon. But I couldn't appreciate it. My eyes were scanning the tree line, searching for something. That's when I saw it again. This time, it was closer. On the other side of the clearing, it stood partially obscured by a large oak. It was emaciated, its limbs too long, its skin the color of old bone. It seemed to have antlers, or maybe they were just twisted branches behind its head. It didn't move, just stood there, watching us. I grabbed Ryan's arm, my hand shaking. "There. Look. Right there." This time, he saw it too. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by a look of pure terror. What is that?" he stammered. The figure took a step out from behind the tree. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, its long arms dangling at its sides. It was so thin it looked like a skeleton draped in dried skin. And its head, it was like a deer skull, but elongated, wrong. It tilted its head, and a sound like grinding rocks echoed through the clearing. "We need to go," Ryan whispered, his voice tight with panic. Now, slowly, we started backing away, never taking our eyes off the creature. "It watch it." Its head swiveling to follow our movement. We turned and broke into a run, crashing through the underbrush, ignoring the trail. Branches whipped at our faces, and roots threatened to trip us with every step. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear it, a scraping, dragging sound, keeping pace with us just behind the veil of trees. We ran blindly, fueled by sheer terror. My lungs burned, and my legs felt like lead. Every time I thought we might have lost it, I had to catch a glimpse of it out of the corner of my eye. Flash of pale bone through the trees, a flicker of movement that was too fast, too unnatural. It was toying with us, appearing and disappearing, always just out of sight, but letting us know it was there. The sound of its movement changed. It wasn't just scraping anymore. It was a rhythmic thudding, as if it was running on all fours. The sound was getting closer. Ryan screamed, a raw, guttural sound of fear. I risked a glance over my shoulder and my blood ran cold. It was loping through the woods, its form a nightmarish blur of tangled limbs and bone. closing the distance at an alarming speed. It wasn't just following, it was hunting. We scrambled down a steep, muddy embankment, sliding and tumbling to the bottom. We were in a ravine, a shallow creek, babbling over rocks. "This way," Ryan yelled, splashing through the icy water. We followed the creek, hoping the water would cover our tracks or confuse it. The sun was fully up now, but the dense canopy of the ravine kept it dim and shadowy. The air felt heavy, charged with a primal dread. For a while, there was silence. Only the sound of our ragged breaths and the splashing of our feet in the water. Maybe we'd lost it. Maybe the water worked. We slowed to a walk, trying to catch our breath, our bodies trembling from adrenaline and cold. We had no idea where we were. Ryan pulled out his phone, but there was no signal. We were completely lost. Just as a sliver of hope began to return, we heard a sound from above us, on the ridge of the ravine, a soft click like a hoof on stone. We froze, looking up. There it was, silhouetted against the morning sky. It stood on the edge of the ravine, looking down at us. It was impossibly still. It just watched. It hadn't been chasing us to catch us. Not yet. It was enjoying the hunt. It knew we were trapped. A voice, dry and raspy like dead leaves skittering across pavement, echoed in my head. It wasn't a sound I heard with my ears, but a thought that wasn't my own. So, hungry, my mind raylit. The legend Ryan had once told me as a campfire story, the story of the Wendigo, the spirit of endless hunger, came crashing back into my mind. The story of a creature that could mimic voices and drive its prey mad with fear before the final chase. We didn't wait. We plunged back into the creek, running again, running for our lives. The ravine twisted and turned, and at every bend, I expected to see it waiting for us. We'd hear it, sometimes on the left ridge, sometimes on the right. It was flanking us, herding us. The voice would whisper in our minds, fragments of our own fears spoken back to us. "No one can hear you. You're so far from home." We finally stumbled out of the ravine and onto a dirt logging road. We were exhausted, covered in mud, and shaken uncontrollably. We looked back, but the woods were silent. There was no sign of the creature. We ran down the road, not knowing where it led, just knowing it was away from those woods. After what felt like an eternity, we heard the sound of an engine, a pickup truck, an old logger on his way to work. He stopped, his eyes wide at the sight of us. We never told him the full story. We just said we got lost, that an animal had spooked us. I don't think he would have believed us anyway. He drove us back to the main road, and we found our way back to Ryan's cabin. We packed our things in silence and left immediately. We didn't stop driving until we were hundreds of miles away from those Minnesota woods. I still have nightmares about it. I see that tall, skeletal figure standing between the trees, its deer skull head tilted to the side. I hear that dry, rasping voice in my mind. Ryan and I don't talk about it. We don't talk much at all anymore. There's an understanding between us, a shared trauma that needs no words. I'll never go hiking at dawn again. Some things are better left unseen in the shadows, and some legends are real, and they're hungry. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever had a similar experience in the deep woods, let me know in the comments. Stay safe out there, and don't forget to subscribe for more Tales from the Edge of the Map. The moon was my only companion, painting the lonely Utah highway in a ghostly silver. I'd been driving for hours, the endless stretch of desert asphalt blurring into a hypnotic trance. My destination was a small town just past the state line, a quiet escape from city life. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks, a mirage born from fatigue. A figure stood on the side of the road, impossibly still. As my headlights swept over it, my blood ran cold. It wasn't human. It was tall and possibly thin, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. It was covered in matted, patchy fur, and its head was a grotesque blend of a coyote and something else, something ancient and wrong. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, my heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't dare look in the rearview mirror, not until I'd put miles between me and that thing. But the desert has a way of playing with your mind. Every shadow that danced in my peripheral vision, every rustle of the wind against my car, felt like it was right behind me. A few miles down the road, my car started to sputter. The engine coughed, choked, and then died, leaving me stranded in an ocean of silence under the cold, indifferent stars. Panic set in. No cell service. Not a single car had passed me for over an hour. I locked the doors and huddled in my seat, trying to rationalize. It was just a weird animal. My car just ran out of gas, but a deep, primal fear told me otherwise. That's when I heard the scratching, a slow, deliberate scraping sound on the roof of my car, like long, sharp claws being dragged across the metal. Scrape. 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 I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for it to go away. The scratching stopped, and for a moment, there was only the sound of my own ragged breathing. Then, a new sound began, a soft tapping on the driver's side window. Tap. 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 I refused to look. I couldn't. The tapping became more insistent, turning into a hard, rhythmic knocking. I buried my face in my hands, trying to block it out. Suddenly, a voice whispered right next to my ear, a dry, raspy sound that was a twisted mimicry of a human voice. "Let me in," I screamed, a raw, guttural sound of pure terror. I risked a glance at the window. A face was pressed against the glass, but it was blurry, indistinct, its features shifting and melting like wax. Its eyes, though, were piercingly clear to burning embers of malevolent intelligence. The door handle began to jiggle violently. The metal of the door frame started to groan and bend inward under an impossible pressure. I knew the car wouldn't hold. In a desperate surge of adrenaline, I fumbled for the ignition, turning the key again and again. Nothing. The groaning grew louder, the door bowing inwards. I could hear the fibers of the metal screaming as they were torn apart. Then, just as I felt the lock give way, the engine roared to life. I didn't hesitate. I threw the car into drive and floored it, not caring where I was going, only that I was getting away. The creature let out a horrifying shriek, a sound that was a mixture of a coyote's howl and a human's scream of agony, a sound that will be etched into my memory forever. I drove like a madman, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I didn't look back until the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. When I finally pulled into a gas station in the next town, I was shaking so badly I could barely stand. The attendant gave me a strange look. I must have looked like I'd seen a ghost. He walked around my car and stopped, his eyes wide. He pointed to the roof and the driver's side door. Deep, jagged gouges were carved into the metal, as if a giant animal with claws of steel had tried to tear its way in. The driver's door was bent, the frame twisted and warped. I never made it to my destination. I turned around and drove straight back to the city, never once looking back at the empty desert highway. Some nights, when the wind howls just right, I can still hear that awful, raspy voice whispering, "Let me in." I've learned some things since that night. I've learned that there are ancient things that walk in the lonely places of the world. They wear the skins of animals and hunt the unwary. They can mimic your voice, know your fears, and they are patient. So if you're ever driving through the Utah desert late at night, and you see something standing on the side of the road, don't slow down. Don't stop. Just keep driving. Because whatever is out there in the dark, you did not want it to notice you. The official story is that I hit a deer. My insurance covered the damage, no questions asked. But the mechanic who fixed my car pulled me aside. He was an old Navajo man, his face a road map of wrinkles. He looked at the deep gouges on the door and then looked me straight in the eye. He didn't say a word, but I saw the understanding, the deep-seated knowledge in his gaze. He knew what had happened. He knew what I'd encountered. He handed me a small, leather pouch filled with herbs. "Keep this with you," he said in a low voice. "It might not stop them, but it will let them know you are not easy prey." I never go on road trips alone anymore. The opened road, which once symbolized freedom, now only reminds me of that suffocating darkness and the thing that lurks within it. I've read stories, Ancient legends about beings that can change their shape, that stalk the desolate corners of the earth. Skinwalkers. The name itself sends a shiver down my spine. They say you shouldn't speak of them, that saying their name can draw their attention. But I have to tell this story. I have to warn people, because that thing on the road, it wasn't just an animal. It was intelligent. It was cunning. It was hunting. And what terrifies me most is that I don't think it was just a random encounter. I think it chose me. What would I have seen when it finally got inside? The thought keeps me awake at night. I moved to a bigger city, surrounded myself with noise and light, hoping to drown out the memory. But the desert silence is a part of me now. I share this not for thrills, but as a warning. There are places in this world where the veil between our reality and something much older and darker is thin, and if you're not careful, you might just stumble through it. Drive safe, and never, ever stop for anything on a lonely desert road at night. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it serves as a cautionary tale. If you found this chilling, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more encounters with the unexplained. Stay safe out there. Ever feel that prickle on the back of your neck? That feeling of being watched when you know you're alone? For a group of cross-country skiers near Toronto, that feeling became a terrifying reality. What started as a training run through a silent, snow-covered forest ended in a desperate race for their lives. This is the chilling account of what they saw, or rather, what they heard, hunting them through the trees. The winter of '98 was brutal. In southern Ontario, snowfalls were relentless, piling up in massive drifts that swallowed fences and buried cars. For the university's Nordic ski team, it was perfect training weather. Coach Miller, a seasoned outdoorsman, decided to take his top 4 skiers, Liam, Chloe, Ben, and Mayan, a long-distance run through the Rouge Valley, a sprawling urban wilderness on the edge of Toronto. It was a place where the city's hum faded into the whisper of wind through ancient trees. They set off just after dawn, the air so cold it felt sharp in their lungs. The sky was a flat, heavy gray, and the only sounds were the rhythmic swoosh of their skis on fresh powder and their own synchronized breathing. They were a tight-knit group, moving as one unit, their brightly colored jackets a stark contrast to the monochrome landscape. For the first hour, everything was normal. They joked, pushed each other's pace, and marveled at the stark beauty of the woods. The trees, heavy with snow, bowed over the trail, creating a series of white tunnels. It felt magical, isolated, like they were the only people left in the world. It was Liam who noticed it first. He was leading the pack, and he suddenly slowed, holding up a hand. The others glided to a stop behind him. "You guys hear that?" he whispered, his breath pluming in the frigid air. They all went silent, listening. At first, there was nothing but the muffled silence of the snow. Then, they heard it. A faint, rhythmic crunching sound coming from somewhere off the trail, deep in the woods. It sounded like footsteps, but wrong. The cadence was off, too slow and heavy for any animal they knew. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause, and it was keeping pace with them. Ben scoffed, ever the skeptic. Probably just a deer, or a branch fallen, but Coach Miller was frowning, his experienced eyes scanning the dense thicket of pines. He'd spent his life in these woods and knew their sounds intimately. This was not a sound he recognized. "Let's pick up the pace a little," he said, his voice tight. They pushed off again, their movements a little less relaxed, their jokes silenced. The crunching sound persisted, a phantom echo of their own progress, always there, just at the edge of hearing. It never got closer, but it never fell behind either. The unease began to curdle into genuine fear. Every snap of a twig, every gust of wind rattling the branches, made them rump. They kept glancing over their shoulders, into the dark spaces between the trees, but saw nothing but an endless sea of white and gray. The feeling of being watched was immense, a physical pressure on their backs. Chloe, who was skiing last, swore she saw a flicker of movement, something dull and unnaturally thin dotting between 2 large oaks far behind them. But when she blinked, it was gone. She tried to tell herself it was just a trick of the light, her mind playing games. Then, the sound changed. The slow, deliberate crunching stopped. For a moment, there was blessed silence, and a wave of relief washed over them. Maybe Ben was right. Maybe it was just an animal that had wandered off. They skied on for another 10 minutes, the tension slowly draining away. They were approaching a steep, winding downhill section that would lead them toward the river and closer to the park's exit. The end of the trail was in sight. That's when they heard the voice. It wasn't a human voice. It was a high, thin, whistling sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It mimicked a bird call, then a child's laugh, but both were distorted, warped into something deeply unsettling. And woven into the mimicry was a single, whispered word, drawn out. Hungry. The sound seemed to scratch at the inside of their skulls. Panic erupted. All pretense of a calm training run shattered. Go. Go now. Coach Amelia yelled, his voice cracking. They didn't need to be told twice. They dug their poles into the snow, pushing with every ounce of strength they had. The downhill slope was treacherous, with sharp turns and hidden roots beneath the powder. In their terror, they skied with reckless abandon. Ben lost his footing on a tight corner, tumbling into a deep snowdrift. Liam and the coach immediately turned back, their skis kicking up frantic sprays of snow. As they struggled to pull Ben out, the whispering grew louder, closer. It was no longer just a word. It was a gurgling, rasping sentence, a mimicry of a human voice begging for help. It sounded exactly like Maya. Help me. I'm so cold. So hungry. But Maya was right there with Chloe, her eyes wide with terror, her hand clamped over her mouth. The voice was coming from the ridge above them, the ridge they had just ascended. They hauled Ben to his feet, his ankle twisted but not broken. Don't listen to it. It's a trick, Miller shouted, his face pale as the snow. They scrambled on, half skiing, The thing in the woods was no longer hiding. They could hear it moving, crashing through the undergrowth with impossible speed. It wasn't walking anymore. It was running, and the sound was horrifying, the snapping of branches, the heavy, loping gait of something huge. It was staying in the trees, just out of sight, shadowing them, toying with them. They finally burst out of the dense forest onto the wide, frozen riverbank. The open space felt both liberating and terrifyingly exposed. The parking lot was less than a kilometer away. They could see it. They could almost taste the safety of their cars. But as they raced across the flat, open expanse, they heard one final sound from the tree line behind them. It wasn't a whisper or a mimicry. It was a scream, a full-throated, ear-splitting shriek of pure rage and frustration. A sound that wasn't made by human lungs. It was the sound of a predator that had just lost its prey. They didn't look back. They didn't dare. They threw their skis into the back of the van and peeled out of the parking lot, tires spinning on the ice. They drove in stunned silence, the only sound the chattering of their own teeth, a combination of cold and sheer terror. No one ever filed an official report. What would they say? That they were chased by a voice? That something impossibly fast and ancient hunted them through the Rouge Valley? They'd be laughed out of the police station, but none of them ever skied in that park again. Liam transferred universities the next semester. Chloe gave up competitive skiing altogether. To this day, they can't explain what they encountered. They only know that deep in the snow-choked forests on the edge of Canada's biggest city, something old and hungry waits. It watches, and it learns the voices of those who trespass on its territory. So if you're ever walking in the woods and hear a familiar voice call for help, be careful. It might not be who you think it is. Thanks for listening to this chilling tale. If you have your own unexplained encounter, share it in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories from the shadows. Stay safe out there. The old Route 66 hotel wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a relic, a stubborn ghost of the past clinging to the side of a forgotten highway. I was on a cross-country drive, and my GPS had died hours ago. The neon sign flickering like a dying heartbeat was the first sign of civilization I'd seen since sunset. The place was called the Coyote's Rest, and the name felt both quaint and a little unsettling. The lobby was empty. save for a stoic man behind the counter, with eyes that seemed to have seen a century of sunrises and sunsets over the desert. He slid a tarnished brass key across the worn wooden counter without a word. Room 213. The hallway was long and dim, the floral wallpaper peeling at the edges. My room was at the very end. The air inside was thick and musty, heavy with the scent of old dust and something else. Something faintly animal, like dump four. I chalked it up to the hotel's age and the desert outside. I was exhausted, so I dropped my bag, locked the door, and fell onto the lumpy mattress. Sleep came quickly, but it was a restless, dream-filled sleep. I dreamt of scratching sounds, not from the walls, but from deep inside my own chest. I woke up with a jolt. The room was pitch black, the kind of absolute darkness that presses in on you. But it wasn't the darkness that woke me. It was the silence, the usual hum of the old building, the creaks and groans of its ancient bones, was gone. It was a dead waiting silence. And then it happened. A single, earth-shattering boom. It wasn't one door. It was every door. Every single door in that long, dark hallway slammed shut at the exact same instant. The sound was so violent, so perfectly synchronized. It vibrated through the floor, up the bed frame, and into my very bones. My heart hammered against my ribs. I sat bolt upright, straining my ears in the suffocating silence that followed. There were no footsteps, no voices, no panicked guests shouting. Nothing. Just the echo of that impossible, unified slam. It was as if the hotel itself had snapped its jaw shut. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at my skin. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't the wind. This was something deliberate, something organized. Slowly, I slid out of bed. The floorboards didn't even creak. It was like the whole building was holding its breath. I crept to the door and pressed my ear against the cool wood. Silence. I fumbled for the peephole, my hands shaking so badly I could barely find it. I squinted, my eye adjusting to the dim, amber glow of the emergency lights in the hall. The hallway was empty. All the doors were closed, perfectly aligned. It looked normal, except for the feeling that something was standing just out of sight, just around the corner, watching, waiting. I backed away from the door, my breath catching in my throat. That's when I heard it. A soft, wet scratching sound. It wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from the window. My window. On the second floor. My blood ran cold. The curtains were drawn, thank God, but the sound was unmistakable. It was the sound of long, sharp claws methodically scraping against the glass, slow and rhythmic. Scrape, pause, scrape, pause. It was testing it, seeing if it would give. I couldn't move. I was frozen in the center of the room, a statue carved from pure terror. The scratching stopped. The silence that followed was even worse. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, every nerve screaming. Then, a new sound began, a low, guttural clicking. It was a vocalization, but not one I'd ever heard from a person or an animal. It was complex, intelligent, and utterly alien. It sounded like it was right outside the pane of glass, whispering its terrible language to the night. The clicking morphed into something else. It started to mimic sounds. First, it was the faint, distant cry of a coyote. But it was wrong. The pitch was too high, the rhythm unnatural. Then, it changed to the sound of a woman weeping softly. The sound was so full of sorrow it almost made me want to open the curtain to help. But the logical part of my brain, the part that was screaming for survival, knew. It knew this was a lure, a trap. The weeping stopped, and a new voice emerged from the darkness outside my window. It was my voice. Perfectly. It was a perfect mimicry of my own voice, whispering a single phrase over and over. Let me in. I'm so cold. Please, let me in. It was my voice, but it was hollow, empty of life. Hearing my own words spoken by that thing outside was the most terrifying moment of my life. It knew me. It was learning me. I scrambled backward, tripping over my bag and landing hard on the floor. I didn't care. I crab walked into the corner of the room, as far from the window and the door as I could get, pulling the thin bedspread over my head like a child. The voice outside my window stopped. The scratching didn't return. For a long time, there was only the sound of my own ragged breathing and the frantic drumming of my heart. I stayed like that, huddled in the corner, until the first hint of gray dawn seeped through the edges of the thick curtains. The morning light felt like a pardon. With the sun up, the fear didn't disappear, but it receded, becoming a manageable, icy knot in my stomach. I waited until the sun was fully in the sky before I dared to move. I packed my bag in a frenzy, my eyes darting between the door and the window. I didn't check the peephole. I didn't look out the window. I just wanted out. I wrenched the door open and practically sprinted down the hallway. All the doors were still closed. The hotel was as silent as a tomb. When I burst into the lobby, the same stoic man was behind the counter, polishing a glass with a slow, deliberate motion. He didn't look up as I slammed the key onto the counter. He just stopped polishing and looked at it. "Leaving so soon?" he asked. His voice was flat, devoid of any curiosity. Something wrong with the room? I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, my throat tight. I turned to leave, my hand on the heavy glass door of the entrance. "The coyotes were loud last night," he said, his voice stopping me in my tracks. I turned back to look at him. He still hadn't looked up from his glass. They get brave in the dark. Try to sound like things they ain't. Try to get inside, where it's warm. He finally lifted his head, and his ancient eyes met mine. There was no sympathy in them, only a deep, unsettling understanding. "You're lucky," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Some doors are meant to stay closed." I didn't need another warning. I pushed the door open and ran to my car, not looking back. As primeras bet Hawaii, the hotel shrinking in my rearview mirror. I knew I hadn't just stayed in a rundown motel. I had spent the night in a cage, and something had been rattling the bars, testing the locks, and whispering my name. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Stay safe out there. The ice was a mirror, reflecting a sky the color of a day-old bruise. My buddy, Mark, and I had driven 12 hours north of Montreal, chasing rumors of monster pike in a lake so remote it didn't even have a name on most maps. Just a sliver of blue, surrounded by an ocean of green and white. We were seasoned anglers, used to the bite of the Quebec winter, the profound silence of the wilderness. But this silence was different. It wasn't peaceful. It felt heavy, like it was listening. Our first day was a bust. The fish weren't biting, and an unsettling fog rolled in by late afternoon, thick and suffocating. It swallowed the shoreline, leaving us in a disorienting world of white. We packed up early, the cold seeping deeper than usual into our bones. Back at our rented cabin, a rickety A-frame that smelled of pine and damp earth, Mark tried to lighten the mood. He cranked up a portable radio, but all we got was static that seemed to pulse in time with the howling wind. That night, the sounds started, a rhythmic tapping on the roof, too irregular for a branch. I told myself it was just the ice shifting, the old cabin groaning under the weight of the snow. Mark didn't say anything, just stared into the fire, his knuckles white around his mug. The next morning, the fog had thinned, but the sky remained a leaden gray. We decided to try a different spot, a cove the cabin owner had circled on our map. As we drilled our holes, an odd feeling washed over me, the feeling of being watched. I scanned the tree line, a dense wall of snow-laden spruce and pine. Nothing, just trees and shadows. But the feeling persisted, a prickle on the back of my neck that wouldn't go away. Mark finally got a bite. A big one. He fought it for a good 10 minutes, his breath pluming in the frigid air. When he finally hauled it up, we bought Stared. It was a massive pike, easily over 40 inches, but its side was gouged, raked by something with claws impossibly long and sharp. The wound was fresh, still weeping. What kind of animal does that? to a fish this size. Under the ice, a bear, an otter. Neither made sense. Mark, ever the pragmatist, shrugged it off. Wolverine, maybe? They're nasty, but his voice lacked conviction. He didn't even want a picture with the fish. He just unhooked it and tossed it back into the dark water. The mood was officially shot. As dusk began to settle, painting the snow in shades of purple and blue, we heard it. A sound that wasn't animal, wasn't human. It was a high-pitched, drawn-out cry that echoed across the lake. A sound of pure, unadulterated hunger. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. All the birds went silent. De, win, die. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. We looked at each other, eyes wide with a shared, unspoken terror. We scrambled, throwing our gear into the sled with clumsy, frozen fingers, not caring what we broke. The trek back to the cabin felt like an eternity. The cry came again, closer this time. It was accompanied by a new sound, the splintering crack of trees, as if something immense was moving through the forest with reckless speed, snapping trunks like twigs. Panic set in. We abandoned the sled and ran, stumbling through the deepening snow, our lungs burning with every icy gasp of air. The woods, our beautiful, serene escape, had become a labyrinth of fear. Every shadow seemed to move, to twist into a shape that was too tall, too thin, too wrong. The scent of decay, of old meat left to rot, suddenly filled the air, so strong it made my stomach churn. We burst through the cabin door, slamming and bolting it behind us. We didn't speak, just huddled by the cold fireplace, listening. The tapping on the roof was back, but it wasn't tapping anymore. It was a heavy, deliberate scraping, the sound of something dragging itself across the shingles. Then, a scratching at the door, not a poing, but the precise, intentional scratch of a single, long nail, tracing the outline of the wood. We could hear it sniffing at the cracks, a low, guttural growl rumbling in its chest. Mark grabbed the fire poker, his face pale as the snow outside. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. No signal. Of course. The scratching stopped. We held our breath. A moment of silence stretched into a minute, then two. Maybe it was gone. Then, a loud, violent bang against the shuttered window, as if a boulder had been thrown against it. It rattled the entire cabin. I saw something through a crack in the shutters, a flicker of movement. It was tall, impossibly so, its limbs long and emaciated, its skin the color of ash. It was just a glimpse, a nightmare's silhouette against the snow, but it was enough. The images burned into my mind. Hours passed. We sat in the dark, back to back, listening to the thing circle the cabin. It would pound on the walls, then go silent for long stretches, playing with us, letting the terror build. We heard it mimic sounds. A woman crying, the crackle of our radio, Mark's name, whispered in a voice that was almost human, but stretched and distorted, like a recording played at the wrong speed. It was trying to lure us out. It knew our names. That was the part that truly broke me. How could it know our names? Sometime before dawn, the sounds faded. The oppressive silence returned. We didn't move until the first sliver of sun pierced the gloom. We didn't pack. We didn't even grab our wallets. We just ran to the truck and drove. We didn't stop, didn't speak, until we saw the first signs of civilization hours later. I never went ice fishing again. Mark sold all his gear. We don't talk about what happened at that nameless lake in Quebec. Some things, once you've seen them, you can't unsee. The locals have a name for it, a name whispered in fear around winter fires. Wendigo. A spirit of hunger, of Thelonili, frozen places. We went looking for fish, but we found something else. We found a hunger that the wilderness never forgets, and it almost found us. So if you ever find yourself deep in the northern woods, and you hear a cry on the wind that makes your blood run cold, don't be a hero, just run. Thanks for watching. If you have your own chilling stories from the wild, Share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there. Have you ever heard a voice cry for help in the dead of night, and every instinct screamed at you not to answer? I learned that lesson the hard way during a solo camping trip on the western slope of Colorado. It was supposed to be a peaceful escape, a chance to reconnect with nature under a canopy of stars. The first day was perfect. I set up my camp near a dense patch of aspen trees, their white trunks like ghostly sentinels. In the fading light, the air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. As darkness fell, I built a crackling campfire, its warmth a comforting bubble against the vast, silent wilderness. I was just settling in, mesmerized by the dancing flames, when I heard it. A faint cry carried on the wind. "Help. Please, help me." It sounded like a woman, her voice strained and weak. My heart jumped. Was someone lost? Injured? I stood up, straining my ears, trying to pinpoint the direction. The sound came again, a little closer this time, from the edge of the woods. "I'm hurt. My leg. I can't walk." Every good Samaritan instinct I had urged me to grab my flashlight and first aid kit and rush into the darkness. But something held me back, a primal fear, a cold knot of dread tightening in my stomach. The woods, which had seemed so serene moments before, now felt menacing. The shadows between the trees deeper and more sinister. The way the voice carried on the wind felt unnatural. It was too clear, yet too distant at the same time. I called out, "Hello. Where are you?" The only reply was the rustling of leaves and the crackle of my fire. I waited, my senses on high alert. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then, the voice again. But this time, it was different. It was closer, right at the edge of my campsite's light. "Please, it's so cold." I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. There was nothing there, just the impenetrable wall of trees. But I could feel it. A presence. I wasn't alone anymore. The temperature seemed to drop, and the fire sputtered as if a sudden gust of wind had hit it. Though the air was unnervingly still, a twig snapped just beyond the tree line. My blood ran cold. I wasn't a stranger to the woods. I knew the sounds of deer, of raccoons, of bears. This was none of those. It was heavy, deliberate. Like something was trying to be quiet but failing. I backed away towards my tent, my hand trembling as I reached for the heavy-duty bear spray I kept clipped to my belt. "Don't be afraid," the voice whispered. And this time it was right behind me. I swear, I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck. He spooned hound heart pounding against my ribs, flashlight beam wildly sweeping the area. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was starting to think I was losing my mind, that the isolation was getting to me. I decided to get into my tent, zip it up tight, and wait until morning. Surely, things would seem less terrifying in the light of day. Inside the thin nylon walls of my tent, I felt marginally safer, but every sound from outside was amplified. The hoot of an owl, the scuttling of some small creature, the whisper of the wind, they all sounded like threats. I tried to calm my breathing, telling myself it was just my imagination running wild. Then I heard the zipper on my tent. Not my zipper from the inside, the zipper on the outside. It moved slowly, a torturous, metallic scrape in the profound silence of the night. My body froze in pure terror. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. The zipper went halfway down and then stopped. A long, drawn-out silence followed. I held my breath, listening, waiting. Then, a low, guttural sound, like an animal clearing its throat, followed by that same woman's voice, but now it was distorted, layered with something else. "Let me in. I need your help." It wasn't a plea anymore. It was a demand. I saw a shadow fall across the tent fabric, a shape that was wrong. It was too tall, too thin, its limbs bent at angles that weren't human. It pressed against the side of the tent, and the nylon stretched, the silhouette of a long, bony finger tracing a line down the fabric. I finally found my voice and screamed, a raw, primal sound of pure fear. I scrambled backward, fumbling for the zipper on the other side of my tent, desperate to create another exit. As my fingers closed around the cold metal tab, I heard a sound that will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was a cough, a dry, racking cough. But it wasn't human. It was the sound a coyote makes, sharp and barking. And then the voice spoke again, but it had changed completely. It was my voice, exactly. My voice. It repeated the words I had yelled just moments earlier. Hello, where are you? It was a perfect, chilling mimicry. That's when I understood. I wasn't dealing with a person, or even a normal animal. The old tales I'd dismissed as local folklore, stories told around campfires to scare tourists, flooded my mind. Stories of creatures that could imitate any sound, any voice, to lure you into the dark. I ripped the back zipper open and scrambled out into the night, not even bothering to grab my pack or my keys. I just ran. I didn't look back. I could hear it behind me, crashing through the undergrowth. It was no longer trying to be stealthy. It was chasing me. I heard a chorus of sounds, a woman's sob, a man's shout for help, the screech of a hawk, and then my own terrified panting, mirrored back at me from the darkness. It was toying with me, using the sounds of human distress to fuel my panic. I ran blindly, branches whipping at my face, my lungs burning. The only thing that kept me going was the thought of the road, the faint hope of civilization. After what felt like an eternity, I burst out of the woods and onto the deserted mountain highway. I didn't stop. I ran down the center of the asphalt, waving my arms frantically at the empty road. The sounds from the woods faded behind me, replaced by the pounding of my own heart. A pair of headlights finally appeared in the distance. A trucker pulled over, his face a mixture of concern and disbelief as a disheveled and babbling mess, explained that something had chased me from my camp. He let me ride with him to the next town. I never went back for my gear. I left my car, my tent, everything. Some things just aren't worth retrieving. So if you're ever out in the wild, deep in the mountains, and you hear a voice calling for help, think twice. Check your instincts, because sometimes the most helpless sounding plea isn't a cry for a rescue. It's bait, and the thing that's hunting you is just waiting for you to get a little bit closer. It might ask for help, but what it really wants is to take your place. Thanks for listening, and remember to stay safe out there. Follow for more stories from the dark corners of the world. The moon was a brilliant, cold eye in the sky, so bright it bleached the color from the forest. It was one of those perfect full moon nights, the kind that makes you feel like you're walking through a dream. My friends, Jake, Sarah, and I had decided on a spontaneous late-night hike. We'd done this trail a dozen times during the day, but under the stark silver light, it felt like an entirely different world. The snow crunched satisfyingly under our boots, a clean, crisp sound in the profound silence. We were about an hour in, joking and laughing, our breath pluming in the frigid air, when Jake suddenly stopped. He pointed down at the path ahead. Hey, check this out. We gathered around. There, pressed deep into the fresh snow, were footprints, but they weren't ours. There were 4 sets. 3 were ours, clearly defined by the treads of our hiking boots. The 4th set was ... wrong. They were long, unnaturally so, and barefoot. The toes were splayed, ending in what looked like deep gouges, almost like claw marks. Who'd be out here, barefoot in this weather? Sarah whispered, her voice tight with unease. The laughter from moments before had vanished, replaced by a heavy, watchful quiet. The strangest part was the pattern. The barefoot prints didn't walk beside ours. They intertwined with them, as if something had been walking in our exact steps, sometimes right on top of our own tracks. It was as if it had been with us the whole time. A silent, unseen companion. A cold dread, colder than the night air, began to seep into my bones. We tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was an animal. A bear, but the prints were too humanoid, too deliberate. The stride was immense, far longer than any human's. A chilling thought surfaced. The track started from nowhere. One moment, there were only our 3 sets of prints, and the next, there were 4. There was no sign of anything approaching from the sides of the trail. It was as if it had simply appeared among us. The silence of the woods was no longer peaceful. It was oppressive, heavy with unspoken threats. Every rustle of a branch, every hoot of a distant owl, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. We decided to turn back. The fun was over. We walked faster now, our shoulders hunched, constantly glancing over our shoulders. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, a physical pressure on the back of my neck. As we were yet, we kept our flashlights trained on the snow. The barefoot tracks continued to follow us, weaving in and out of our own. Sometimes they would veer off the path for a few feet, circling a tree, before rejoining us. It felt like a game, a terrifying, predatory game. We didn't talk. The only sounds were our ragged breaths and the frantic crunching of our boots. The moon, once beautiful, now seemed like a spotlight, pinning us in place for whatever was stalking us. Then, the prints stopped. Just as suddenly as they had appeared, Bunny said. We stood there, huddled together, sweeping our lights across the empty snow. It was even more terrifying than seeing them. Where had it gone? The woods seemed to hold their breath. The air grew still, the temperature dropping so sharply it felt like the world had frozen. That's when Jake let out a choked gasp. He wasn't looking at the ground anymore. He was staring up, into the thicket of pines just off the trail. I followed his gaze, my heart hammering against my ribs. And primera, sha, W italiano. At first, it was just a shape, a disturbance in the pattern of branches and moonlight. But as my eyes adjusted, the form resolved itself. It was impossibly tall and gaunt, its limbs stretched to an unnatural length, like a tree branch given grotesque life. Its skin was the color of old bone, stretched tight over a skeletal frame. It was perfectly still, standing between 2 massive pine trees, its body almost blending into the pale bark. It wasn't hiding, it was just there, watching us. Its head was the worst part. It was vaguely deer-like, but wrong. The antlers were jagged, broken shards of bone, and where a face should have been, there was only a smooth, shadowed skull with deep, empty sockets. There was no sound, no growl, no roar, no movement. It just stared. The emptiness of its gaze was a void that seemed to pull all the warmth, all the hope from the world. We were paralyzed, trapped in that silent, unblinking stare. Time seemed to stretch and warp. It felt like we stood there for an eternity, caught in the crosshairs of this ancient, silent, or it wasn't aggressive. It wasn't threatening in any obvious way. It was just watching, with an unnerving stillness that spoke of infinite patience. I don't know who moved first, but the spell broke. A collective, silent scream of terror finally gave our legs permission to move. We didn't run, we fled. We scrambled and fell, clawing our way back down the trail, not daring to look back. We didn't need to. We could feel its stare burning into our backs every step of the way. We didn't stop running until the lights of the parking lot cut through the trees, a beacon of sanity in a world that had gone mad. We piled into the car, locking the doors, fumbling with the keys. As we sped away, the forest was just a dark, impenetrable wall in the rearview mirror. We never spoke of what we saw, not in detail. We couldn't. How do you describe a silence that's louder than any scream? How do you explain a presence that feels older than the mountains themselves? Years have passed. I still hike, but never at night, and never when the moon is full. Sometimes, when the world is quiet, I can still feel it. That cold, patient stare. I know it's still out there, in the deep woods, walking silently on barefoot feet, leaving no tracks, just waiting and watching. It didn't want to hunt us that night. It didn't need to. It just wanted us to know that we were in its world, and that it could reach us whenever it pleased. Some horrors don't need to speak or attack. Sometimes, the most terrifying thing in the world is just to be seen. Thanks for tuning in. If this story sent a chill down your spine, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there. The streetlights in Lubbock cast long, strange shadows, but the one that started following my friend Mark and me was different. It wasn't attached to anything. We were just walking back from a late-night study session at the university library, enjoying the cool West Texas air. At first, it was just a flicker in our peripheral vision, a darker patch of darkness that seemed to move when we did and stop when we stopped. We tried to laugh it off, blaming it on tired eyes and the weird angles of the city lights. But the feeling of being watched, that cold prickle on the back of your neck, it just wouldn't go away. We picked up our pace, joking about being spooked by nothing. The shadow kept up. It flowed over cracks in the sidewalk, stretched across lawns, and slipped silently behind trees, always maintaining the same distance. It was unnervingly intelligent. We'd turn a corner sharply, hoping to catch it off guard. But there it would be, waiting, a formless stain on the pavement just behind us. The humor in our voices evaporated, replaced by a tense, heavy silence. The only sounds were our footsteps, which seemed deafeningly loud, and the frantic pounding of my own heart. This was no trick of the light. Mark, ever the skeptic, decided to test it. He suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. I nearly crashed into him. We both turned around. The shadow had stopped too, about 20 feet back. It was just a shapeless blot, but seeing it stationary, independent of any object, was terrifying. It wasn't flat against the ground anymore. It seemed to have a subtle depth, a thickness, like a pool of ink that had just been spilled. A low sound, almost too faint to be real, reached us. It was a soft clicking, like fingernails tapping on stone. That's when the real panic set in. This wasn't just a shadow. It was something solid, something alive, just cloaked in darkness. We didn't say a word. We just locked eyes, and a silent agreement passed between us. We turned and we ran. We sprinted down the empty streets, not daring to look back, but we could feel it. The presence was right behind us, a cold wave of air chasing our heels. The clicking sound was louder now, closer, a dry, rhythmic clatter that seemed to be coming from multiple points at once, as if something was scuttling along on too many limbs. We could hear a faint, wheezing breath, a dry, raspy sound that was somehow worse than a roar. It was the sound of something ancient and utterly wrong. We were only a few blocks from my apartment, but it felt like miles. Every muscle in my legs burned. My lungs screamed for air, but we couldn't stop. The thought of what would happen if that thing caught us was fuel enough. We fumbled for the keys as we reached my front door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely fit the key in the lock. The clicking was right there, just at the edge of the porch light. I risked a glance over my shoulder. For a split second, the darkness seemed to coalesce, to rise up. I saw 2 pinpricks of faint, hungry light ignite within the shadow, like distant embers. They weren't eyes, not really. They were just points of malevolent awareness. The lock finally turned. We burst inside, slammed the door shut, and threw every lock we had. We collapsed against the door, gasping for breath, our hearts hammering against our ribs. For a long moment, there was silence. We strained our ears, listening for any sound from outside. Nothing. Had we imagined it? Was it all just a stress-induced hallucination? Then we heard it, a long, sharp scratch, like a single claw, being dragged slowly down the wooden surface of the door. It was deliberate, a clear message. It knew where we were. We backed away from the door, moving deeper into the apartment as if that would offer any real protection. We didn't turn on any lights, too afraid of drawing attention to the windows. We just sat there in the dark, listening. The scratching stopped. It was replaced by a soft, inquisitive tapping on the window pane in the living room. Tap, tap, tap. Then a whisper. It was a distorted, airy sound, like wind blowing through a crack, but it formed a word. It mimicked Mark's voice, perfectly. "Let me in," it whispered. "It's cold out here." My blood ran cold. Mark was sitting right next to me, his face a mask of pure terror. The thing outside began to circle the apartment. We could hear its dry, clicking footsteps on the concrete path outside. First at the living room window, then moving towards the back, towards my bedroom. It would stop at each window, tap gently, and whisper. Sometimes it used Mark's voice. Sometimes it used mine. It would say things we'd said to each other earlier that day, twisting our own words into something menacing. Did you finish that history paper? It would whisper in my voice. Let's get a burger tomorrow. It would hiss in Mark's. It was playing with us, learning us. The psychological terror was 1,000 times worse than just being chased. Or spaced. Basse. We stayed huddled on the floor, too scared to move, too scared to even speak. The tapping and whispering were relentless. At one point, we heard a heavy thud on the roof, followed by the sound of something dragging itself across the shingles. It was testing every part of the building, looking for a way in. The sun finally began to rise, painting the sky in shades of gray and orange. As the first true rays of sunlight hit the building, the sounds stopped. Complete and utter silence fell over the apartment. We waited, barely breathing, for what felt like an eternity. When we finally felt brave enough, we crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. The street was empty. There was nothing there. No shadow, no creature, nothing. The only evidence of the night's events was a single, long, deep scratch mark on the front door. We never walked home late at night in Lubbock again. We never spoke about what we saw. Not really. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, I can still hear that faint, dry, clicking sound. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to the bone, that the shadow is still out there, waiting. Thanks for watching, and if you have your own story, share it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there. The late-night shift at my office in Phoenix usually meant an empty building and a silent parking lot. That's what I expected last Tuesday. But what I found instead still makes my blood run cold. It was almost midnight when I finally packed up my things. The office was on the outskirts of town, surrounded by stretches of desert, and the parking lot was vast, with only a few lonely streetlights casting long, distorted shadows. As I walked towards my car, a strange sound cut through the silence. It was a faint, rhythmic tapping. I stopped, scanning the rows of empty vehicles. Nothing. I figured it was just the wind or a loose sign, but then I heard it again, closer this time. Tap! Tap! I fumbled for my keys, my heart starting to thump against my ribs. I kept my eyes fixed on my car, trying to ignore the unnerving sound. As I got closer, I noticed something odd. There was a figure standing near the far end of the lot, almost perfectly still, silhouetted against the distant glow of the city. It was tall and unnaturally thin. I froze, my hand hovering over my car door handle. My first thought was that it was a prank, maybe one of my coworkers trying to scare me. But the stillness of the figure was all wrong. It didn't move like a person. I decided to just get in my car and leave. Fast, I unlocked the door, the click echoing loudly in the quiet lot. The moment the sound broke the silence, the figure's head snapped in my direction. It moved with a speed that wasn't human. I jumped into my car, slammed the door shut, and locked Italiano. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. I risked a glance back at the figure. It was gone. Vanished. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. I started the engine, the roar of the motor, a comforting sound in the oppressive silence. I threw the car into reverse, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror. And that's when I saw it, standing right behind my car, bathed in the red glow of my taillights, was the same impossibly tall, slender figure. But now I could see it more clearly. Its limbs were too long, bent at angles that seemed painful, and its head was tilted in a way that would snap a human neck. It had no discernible face, justa smooth pale surface where features should have been. I slammed on the gas, the tires squealing as I peeled out of the parking spot. I didn't look back, I just drove. My foot pressed hard on the accelerator. My eyes locked on the road ahead. I expected to hear sirens, to see flashing lights in my mirror. But there was nothing. Juste dart. Empty highway. stretching out before me. When I finally dared to glance in my rearview mirror again, the parking lot was empty, as if nothing had ever been there. I tried to rationalize it, a trick of the light, exhaustion playing with my mind, but the tapping sound started again. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from the roof of my car. I almost swerved off the road. My heart felt like it was going to explode. The tapping was deliberate, slow, right above my head. It was keeping pace with the car. I was driving at over 80 miles an hour, but it was still there. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't stop. I couldn't pull over. What would I even find? I just kept driving, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, the rhythmic tapping a horrifying drumbeat accompanying my frantic escape. The sound was a constant reminder that I wasn't alone, that something was with me, clinging to my car as I sped through the Arizona night. The tapping continued for what felt like an eternity, a torturous, nerve-shredding rhythm. Every few seconds, I'd hear a faint scratching sound, like long nails dragging across the metal roof. I was too terrified to even breathe properly. I just focused on the white lines on the highway, praying they would lead me to safety. I drove straight to the police station in the next town over, not even daring to go home. I screeched into their brightly lit parking lot and sat there for a full minute, car still running, the tapping finally silent. I stumbled out of the car, my legs feeling like jelly. I looked up at the roof, expecting to see something, but there was nothing. The roof was clean, untouched, except for a set of long, deep scratches etched into the paint, starting from the back and leading all the way to the front, right above the driver's seat. The officers I spoke to were polite, but skeptical. They searched the area, found nothing, and suggested I was probably just tired and spooked by the desert. They couldn't explain the scratches, though. They logged it as vandalism. But I knew it wasn't vandalism. I've lived in Arizona my whole life. I've heard the stories, the old warnings passed down through generations. Stories you dismiss as folklore until something happens that you can't explain. The stories about things that mimic sounds, things that move in ways that defy physics, things that hunt in the dark. That night, I didn't see a prankster or a vagrant. I saw something ancient and predatory, something that shouldn't exist. It's been a week, and I haven't been able to sleep without the lights on. I quit my job the next day. I can't go back to that office, to that parking lot, because every time I close my eyes, I see that tall, slender figure in my rearview mirror, and I hear the tapping. Tap, tap. And I know, deep in my bones, that it knows where I am, and it's just waiting. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there. My dad used to be a taxi driver in Michigan, mostly around the Upper Peninsula. He worked the night shift, a lonely job filled with long, dark stretches of highway cutting through endless forests. He told me a lot of stories from those nights. But there's one he only told me once. His voice barely a whisper, his eyes fixed on something far away. He said he never wanted to tell it again, and after hearing it, I understood why. It was a frigid January night, the kind where the cold feels like it's biting right through the metal of the car. A blizzard had just passed, leaving behind a world blanketed in deep, pristine snow. The roads were mostly empty, just the occasional snowplow rumbling in the distance. My dad was heading back towards Marquette after a late drop-off near Ish. The heater was blasting, but the chill from outside seemed to seep through the windows. He was on a back road, a shortcut he knew well, when his headlights caught something in the middle of the road. At first, he thought it was a deer, frozen in the glare. He slowed down, annoyed. Hitting a deer would wreck his taxi and his night. But as he got closer, he realized this was no deer. It was too tall, too thin. It was standing on two legs. His first thought was that it was a person, someone who'd had car trouble. He pulled up slowly, rolling down his window a crack. The cold air rushed in, smelling of pine and something else. Something metallic and wrong, like old pennies. "Hey, you need a hand?" Called out. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, a dark silhouette against the white snow. My dad squinted, trying to make out details. The thing was impossibly tall, maybe 7 or 8 feet. Its limbs were long and spindly, like tree branches, and they seemed to bend at odd angles. It was hunched over, its head low, as my dad's headlights fully illuminated it. He saw that its skin was a pale, grayish color, stretched tight over bones that looked ready to poke through. It was emaciated, skeletal, but it had a presence that felt powerful. A wave of primal fear, cold and sharp, washed over my dad. This wasn't a person. This wasn't any animal he'd ever seen or read about. The old local legends, the stories the Ojibwe elders told about the deep woods, flashed through his mind. Stories of a hungry spirit, a creature born of starvation and winter's despair. A Wendigo. He slammed his foot on the gas. The taxi's tires spun on the icy road for a terrifying second before they caught, and the car lurched forward. He didn't dare look in his rearview mirror. Ehustrub, his heart hammering against his ribs like it wanted out. He kept his eyes glued to the road ahead, the tunnel of his headlights, the only thing that felt real. But then, he heard it, a faint scratching sound from the back of the car. At first, he told himself it was just a branch scraping against the side. But the sound wasn't coming from the side. It was coming from the roof. Scratch, drag, scratch. It was the sound of long, sharp things being dragged across the metal. He could feel the weight of it, a subtle pressure on the car's suspension. It was on his taxi. Panic threatened to swallow him whole. His hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. He wanted to scream, to swerve, to do anything to get it off. But he knew if he lost control on this road, it would be over. So he just drove, faster and faster, the engine whining in protest. The scratching continued, a rhythmic, horrifying sound that synced up with his own frantic heartbeat. Then, a new sound started. A low, guttural breathing, right by his ear. It was impossible. The windows were all rolled up, but he could hear it, a wet, rasping inhale and exhale, carrying that same coppery smell. He chanced a glance at the passenger side window. Pressed against the glass, distorted and nightmarish, was a face. Edad, no lips, just teeth, long and yellowed, pulled back in a permanent, hungry grimace. Its eyes were sunk deep into its skull, but they glowed with a faint, internal light, like dying embers. They stared right at him, filled with an ancient, bottomless hunger. My dad screamed, a raw, terrified sound that was swallowed by the roar of the engine. He stomped on the accelerator, pushing the old taxi to its limit. The car fishtailed, and for a moment, he thought he was going to spin out into the dark trees. But somehow, he held on. The face disappeared from the window. The scratching from the roof stopped, but the silence that followed was even worse. Was it gone? Was it waiting? He didn't slow down. He drove like a madman, not even breathing, until he saw the first comforting glow of the streetlights of Marquette. Only then did he ease his foot off the gas, his whole body trembling so violently he could barely steer. He pulled into the first well-lit gas station he saw, the fluorescent lights feeling like a sanctuary. He practically fell out of the car, his legs like jelly. He needed to see. He needed to know if he was going crazy. He forced himself to walk around to the back of the taxi. The trunk was fine. The sides were fine, but the roof was covered in long, deep gouges. The paint was peeled back, and the raw metal underneath was scored with parallel lines, like something with enormous claws had been holding on for dear life. And there, frozen to the roof in the biting cold, was a single, long strand of coarse, grayish hair. My dad never drove that back road at night again. He sold the taxi a few months later and got a job at a factory, working the day shift. He said he couldn't stand being alone in the dark anymore. Sometimes, on really cold winter nights, I see him looking out the window into the woods behind our house, his face pale, his expression haunted. He never told the story again, but I know he relives it. He knows what's out there in the deep, cold woods of Michigan when the winter hunger sets in. And now, so do I. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more tales from the dark. Stay safe out there. The desert air was still and warm, the kind that feels like a heavy blanket, even after the sun has long since dipped below the horizon. My friend, Leo, and I were driving back from a weekend camping trip near the Navajo Nation, feeling a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. We were cutting through a desolate stretch of road, a black ribbon laid across a landscape of rock and shadow, with nothing but the twin beams of my headlights pushing back the immense darkness. The stars were out in full force, a brilliant, silent audience to our journey. To keep ourselves awake, we were telling stupid jokes, the kind that are only funny when you're over. Leo cracked a particularly lame one about a cactus, and I let out a loud, barking laugh that echoed slightly in the cab of my truck. Leo joined in his laugh, a deeper rumble next to mine. For a moment, our laughter filled the small space, a pocket of warmth and life in the vast, empty desert. And then, just as our chuckles were dying down, we heard it. From somewhere behind the truck, out in the pitch-black nothingness, our laughter was repeated. It was a perfect mimicry, my loud bark, Leo's deeper rumble, but it was off. It was a beat too late, a fraction of a second behind where it should have been, and it was flat, hollow, like a recording played on a cheap, tinny speaker. All the humor was gone, replaced by a cold, mocking quality that sent a shiver straight down my spine. I slammed my foot on the brake. The truck screeched to a halt, kicking up a cloud of dust that swirled in the taillights. Leo and I stared at each other, our eyes wide in the dim glow of the dashboard. "What was that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I fumbled for the button to roll up my window, the worry of the motor sounding deafeningly loud in the sudden silence. "Did you hear that?" Leo asked again, more urgently this time. He just nodded, my gaze fixed on the rearview mirror, trying to pierce the darkness behind us. But there was nothing, just the empty road stretching back into the void. "It sounded like us," he said, the realization dawning on his face, mirroring the terror I felt. "Drive," he said, his voice firm. "Just drive. Now." I didn't need to be told twice. I stomped on the gas pedal, and the engine roared to life, tires spitting gravel as we shot forward. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I kept my eyes glued to the road ahead, but my mind was replaying that sound over and over, the perfect, yet horribly imperfect, echo of our laughter. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't a trick of the wind. It was intelligent. It was deliberate, and it was toying with us. For the next 10 miles, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the tires on the asphalt. The silence was heavy, thick with unspoken fear. Every shadow on the side of the road looked like a figure. Every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a strange echo, a bizarre acoustic phenomenon of the desert canyon we were driving through. But I knew better. The sound had come from a specific point, right behind the truck, and it had been too clear, too precise. Leo finally broke the silence. "My grandfather used to tell stories," he began, his voice low and shaky, "about things that live out here, things that watch from the darkness." I knew where he was going with this. We were on the edge of the reservation, deep in territory that was steeped in folklore and ancient warnings. He called them skinwalkers, shapeshifters. They can mimic sounds, voices, anything to lure you in. They enjoy fear. My blood ran cold. I'd always dismissed those stories as campfire tales, spooky legends meant to scare tourists. But hearing that hollow, delayed laughter, it felt like a legend had just crawled out of the darkness and tapped on our window. The idea that something was not just out there, but actively messing with us, was terrifying. It wasn't just a predator. It was a malevolent intelligence. Suddenly, a rhythmic thumping sound started from the back of the truck. Thump. Thump. It was steady, almost like someone was tapping on the truck bed with their knuckles. I glanced at the rearview mirror again, my heart hammering. I could see the dark shape of our camping gear tied down under a tarp. Nothing seemed out of place. "It's just the gear shifting," I said, trying to convince myself as much as Leo. But the thumping was too regular. It wasn't the random jolt of a loose cooler. It was methodical. Thump. Thump. Leo was staring at the back window, his face pale. "Don't stop," he breathed. "Whatever you do, don't stop." I pushed the accelerator harder, the speedometer climbing to 80, then 90. The road was straight and empty. Thank God. The thumping continued, matching its pace with our speed, growing faster and more insistent. It was no longer just a tapping. It sounded heavier now, like a fist pounding on the metal. The whole truck bed seemed to vibrate with each impact. Then, the sound changed. It became a scraping, a long, drawn-out screech of something sharp dragging across the metal roof of the cab, right above our heads. It sounded like claws, long, hard claws digging into the paint. I flinched, instinctively ducking my head. Leo let out a choked gasp. The sound was so close, so immediate. It was no longer behind us. It was on top of us. My mind was screaming. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a branch, a loose piece of equipment, anything. But we were in the middle of the desert. There were no trees, and our gear was in the bed, not on the roof. The scraping moved from the roof down the passenger side, right next to Leo's window. He shrank away from the door, pressing himself against the center console. We could hear it scratching, testing the window, the sound of nails on glass, sending a fresh wave of ice through my veins. "It's trying to get in," Leo stammered, his eyes locked on the glass, though we could see nothing but our own terrified reflections against the blackness outside. I was hyperventilating, my breaths coming in short, sharp gasps. My only thought was to go faster, to outrun it. The engine screamed in protest as I pushed the truck to its absolute limit, and then, as suddenly as it began, the scraping stopped. For a few blessed seconds, there was silence again. But it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a predator holding its breath. I held mine too, waiting. The thing that happened next will be burned into my memory forever. A face appeared outside Leo's window. It wasn't human. It was long and gaunt, with pale, leathery skin stretched tight over a skeletal frame. But the worst part was the eyes. They were large, dark, and hollow, yet they seemed to glow with a faint, internal light. They were ancient and filled with a profound, chilling intelligence, and its mouth was stretched into a wide, impossibly long grin, showing rows of narrow, pointed teeth. It was the grin of something that was enjoying our terror. It was pure evil. Leo screamed. A raw, primal sound of pure horror. I didn't even think. I swerved the truck hard to the left, then sharply back to the right. The creature, the Skinwalker, was thrown from the side of the vehicle. I heard a heavy thud as it hit the asphalt. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just kept my foot buried on the accelerator, weaving erratically as I sped down the highway. We drove for what felt like an eternity, the lights of a small town finally appearing like a beacon of salvation on the horizon. I didn't slow down until we were in the middle of a brightly lit gas station, the truck parked directly under a flickering fluorescent lamp. I killed the engine, and we sat there, shaking, covered in a cold sweat, the silence of the cab finally feeling safe. After a few minutes, we slowly got out of the truck to inspect the damage. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely stand. There, on the roof and down the passenger side door, were long, deep gouges in the paint, scraped all the way down to the bare metal. They were the unmistakable marks of claws. We never spoke of it again, not in detail. We didn't have to. We both knew what we saw. We had come face to face with a legend, and it had left its mark, not just on my truck, but on our souls. To this day, whenever I hear laughter in a quiet place, I feel a cold dread creep up my spine, and I can't help but listen for that horrifying, delayed echo from the darkness. Thank you for watching. If you have your own chilling encounter you'd like to share, leave it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the shadows. Stay safe out there. The crisp mountain air felt like a promise of adventure, of escape from the city's endless drone. My friend, Liam, and I had planned this trip to the Rockies for months. Just a simple night out under the stars, a campfire, and a few beers. We found the perfect spot. A secluded clearing not too far from an old, rickety wooden bridge that spanned a deep, dark ravine. The sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples. We set up our tent, got a fire crackling, and settled in. The only sounds were the pop and hiss of the fire, the distant call of an owl, and our own laughter echoing in the vast wilderness. It felt peaceful, almost magical. But as darkness swallowed the last of the light, a different feeling began to creep in. The woods, which had felt so welcoming just an hour ago, now seemed to press in on us, holding its breath. The temperature dropped suddenly, and an unnatural silence fell. The crickets stopped chirping. The owl went quiet. Even the fire seemed to burn a little lower, as if intimidated by the encroaching dark. I remember looking at Liam, seeing my own unease reflected in his eyes. He tried to laugh it off. "Spooky," he said, his voice a little too loud. I forced a smile, but the feeling wouldn't go away. It was a primal sort of fear, the kind that whispers in your ear that you are not alone, and that whatever is with you is not friendly. We tried to ignore it, to chalk it up to city folks being unnerved by the true wilderness. We talked about work, about old college memories, anything to fill the suffocating silence. But every snap of a twig in the distance made us jump. Every gust of wind through the pines sounded like a low, mournful whisper. The air grew colder still, carrying a strange scent, something like damp earth and rotting leaves, but with a sharp, metallic undertone that made my stomach clench. I got up to grab another log for the fire, and that's when I saw it. Or rather, I saw its absence. The shadows at the edge of the woods were deeper than they should have been, unnaturally so. It felt like something was standing just beyond the firelight, something that was drinking the light, a void in the shape of a man. I froze, my hand outstretched. "Liam," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Do you see that?" He followed my gaze, and I saw his face pale in the firelight. He didn't say a word, just a slow, terrified shake of his head. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, paralyzed by a fear so profound it was physical. Then, the shadow moved. It wasn't a human movement. It was too fast, too fluid. It was a lurch, a disjointed and grotesque shift from one patch of darkness to another. Our campfire was our only shield, a small island of warmth and light in an ocean of cold, hungry darkness. The smell got stronger, more nauseating. It was the smell of decay, of old meat, left too long in the sun, and with it came a sound. It wasn't a growl, not a hiss. It was a low, guttural clicking, like dry bones rattling together. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, echoing off the trees and the rocks. We slowly backed away from the edge of the firelight, moving closer to our tent. Our minds were screaming to run, to get in the car and drive until the sun came up. But our bodies were locked in place. The clicking grew louder, closer. And then, from the deepest part of the shadow, 2 pinpricks of light ignited. They weren't reflections, weary eyes, glowing with a faint, sickly yellow light. They were watching us, studying us. They were intelligent. That was the worst part. This wasn't just some bear or mountain lion. This was a predator that thought, that planned. It was toying with us, enjoying our terror. The clicking sound was joined by a low, wheezing breath, a sound that spoke of an ancient, insatiable hunger. It was the sound of a creature that had been starving for a very, very long time. The thing began to circle our campsite, always staying just at the edge of the fire's reach. We could see glimpses of it. It was tall, impossibly so, and painfully thin. Its limbs were too long, its joints bent at unnatural angles. Its skin was the color of ash, stretched tight over a skeletal frame. We were trapped. The car was 100 yards away, on the other side of that thing. The tent offered no protection. We were utterly, completely helpless. The creature stopped its circling and stood perfectly still, directly in the path to the bridge. Its head, which was elongated and almost deer-like, but hideously wrong, tilted to one side. The clicking stopped. The silence that followed was even more terrifying. It was the silence of a predator about to strike. Liam finally broke. He let out a choked sob. "What is that thing?" he whimpered. I couldn't answer. The word was on the tip of my tongue. A word from old legends and campfire stories I'd never truly believed until now. Wendigo. It had to be. Everything matched the horrifying description: emaciated form, the unnatural height, the foul stench, the insatiable hunger you could feel radiating from it like heat. It wanted us. It wanted to consume us. The creature took a step into the firelight. Just one. And we saw its face. There were no lips, just a gaping maw, filled with jagged, yellowed teeth. Its eyes burned with a malevolent intelligence, a cold, ancient hatred. It raised one long, spindly arm, tipped with claws that looked like shards of obsidian. The arm seemed to stretch, elongating as it reached for us. That's when our survival instincts finally kicked in. We turned and ran. We didn't even think about the tent or our supplies. We just ran, away from the campsite, away from that thing. We sprinted towards the only other landmark we knew. The old wooden bridge. Our lungs burned as we crashed through the undergrowth, branches whipping at our faces. Behind us, we could hear it. It wasn't running. It was loping, taking huge, impossible strides. The ground seemed to shake with each step. The sound was a rhythmic thud, 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 that matched the frantic beating of our hearts. It wasn't even trying to be quiet anymore. It was chasing us. The bridge was just ahead, a dark silhouette against the star-filled sky. It was our only hope, our only path across the ravine. We scrambled onto the wooden planks, the old wood groaning under our weight. The ravine below was a bottomless pit of black. "Don't look down. Just keep moving," I yelled at Liam, who was right behind me. We were halfway across when the thudding stopped. We dared to glance back. The creature was standing at the entrance to the bridge. It was just standing there, its glowing eyes fixed on us. It tilted its head again, as if confused by our actions. Then, it let out a sound that will haunt my nightmares for the rest of my life. It was a scream, but it wasn't a scream of rage or pain. It was a perfect mimicry of a human voice, a woman's voice, crying for help. "Please, help me." It's so cold. The voice was filled with such despair, such agony, that for a split second, I almost stopped. It was a trick, a lure. The legends were true. It could mimic its prey to draw them in. The horror of that realization propelled us forward. We were almost to the other side. Then, the creature moved. But it didn't walk onto the bridge. Instead, it crouched down, its long limbs coiling like springs. For a moment, it was perfectly still. The silence was absolute, and then it jumped. It didn't just jump onto the bridge, it jumped over it. The creature launched itself into the air, a horrifying, skeletal arc against the night sky. It soared over our heads, over the entire length of the bridge, its spindly form silhouetted by the moon. We watched, frozen in utter disbelief, as it landed silently on the other side, blocking our path. It landed without a sound, a phantom of death. It was in front of us now. We were cornered on the bridge, the deep ravine on either side, and this ancient nightmare blocking our only way forward. It stood up to its full, terrifying height, towering over us. It was so close now I could see the details of its desiccated skin, the veins like black rivers under the surface. It opened its mouth, and the mimicry began again. But this time, it was a cacophony of voices, a man begging for his life, a child crying for its mother, the laughter of our own voices from earlier that evening, all twisted into a horrifying chorus of despair. It was using our own sounds against us. It was savoring our fear. This was the end. I closed my eyes, waiting for the inevitable. But then, a new sound cut through the night. A roaring engine. Headlights sliced through the darkness, illuminating the far end of the bridge. A truck was coming down the mountain road. The creature flinched, turning its head towards the bright lights. It let out a shriek, a sound of pure rage and frustration. no longer mimicking anything human. It was the raw, primal sound of a thwarted predator. The headlights washed over its form, revealing every horrifying detail. For a split second, it hesitated, its glowing eyes darting between us and the approaching vehicle. It seemed to weigh its options, and then, as fast as it had appeared, it was gone. It didn't run into the woods. It turned and ran straight down the road, away from us and the truck. And the way it ran, I will never be able to erase that image from my mind. Its movements were disjointed, its long legs pumping in a grotesque, inhuman gait. It moved with a speed that was simply impossible, covering the ground with terrifying efficiency. It disappeared around a bend in the road, swallowed by the darkness once more. The truck screeched to a halt just feet from the bridge. A man leaned out the window, his face a mask of confusion. "You two, all right? What in the world are you doing out here?" We couldn't speak. We just stumbled off the bridge, our legs shaking so badly we could barely stand. We collapsed onto the dirt road, gasping for air, our bodies racked with tremors. The man helped us into his truck, wrapping us in old blankets. He didn't ask what we saw. Maybe he knew. Maybe the people who live in these mountains know not to ask questions about the things that hunt in the dark. He just drove us back to town, the silence in the cab thick with unspoken terror. We never went back to get our car or our gear. Some things are better left behind. I still see it sometimes, when I close my eyes. The impossibly tall figure, the glowing yellow eyes, and that horrifying leap over the bridge. And I hear the voices, the mimicked screams of its past victims. The Rockies are beautiful, but they hold ancient secrets, and some secrets are hungry. I have worked seasonal fire watch in northern Montana for 6 summers now. My post sits 22 miles from the nearest road, perched on a ridge that overlooks the Flathead Range. The tower is small, just a single room of pine boards and glass. There is a cot, a stove, a desk, and the logbook where every observation is written by hand. It is quiet work, the kind that strips away everything you don't need. Each day you record temperature, wind, and visibility. Each night you listen to the trees breathe. The Forest Service trains you to stay calm. Fires start small, animals move in patterns, and people see strange things when they spend too long alone. You learn to separate what is real from what is noise. I took pride in that. I liked the solitude, the honesty of the work. Most of my shifts began the same way: coffee at dawn, a weather report at 7, and long hours of scanning for smoke. By evening, the mountains turned violet and the timberline glowed as if lit from within. After sunset, the only sound was the wind around the guy wires and the faint hum of the radio. The first odd thing happened on July 14th. I woke before sunrise and saw that the logbook on the desk had been left open. I never leave it that way. I have a habit of closing it flat to keep dust from settling on the pages. I assumed the wind had blown it open. Then I saw my handwriting. A new entry had been written under the previous night's notes. The line was short: 4:16 a.m. Low visibility, 1 silhouette East Ridge. The signature beneath was mine. I rubbed my eyes, certain I had written it in my sleep. I checked the timestamp on the radio logs. Nothing had transmitted at that hour. The sky outside was clear. That afternoon, I walked the ridge trail to check for hikers. There were no prints in the soil, no broken branches, no sign of anyone near the tower. The air smelled of sap and frost. When I returned, I erased the line and made a note about the mistake. That night, I locked the door, secured the hatch, and slept with the radio beside my cot. The static of the weather channel lulled me out. I woke again just before dawn. The logbook was open to a new page. The entry read, 4:16 a.m. Same silhouette, closer. The handwriting was mine again. Same slant, same pressure. I checked the door. Still locked. The key was where I left it. The temperature inside the cabin was cold enough to see my breath. I lit the stove and tried to laugh it off, telling myself I was overtired. Solitude does strange things to memory. I wrote the date again, carefully, and signed my name beneath it in a different color of ink to prove I was awake. The following days passed without trouble. The air grew drier, the horizon sharp. By the 20th, the first thunderstorms had rolled through. Lightning hit a slope 5 miles north, and I spent 2 hours tracking the smoke column until it died out. That night, the radio crackled with faint chatter from the next tower east. An old ranger named Keller who had been on the line for 20 years. I told him about the entries as a joke. He didn't laugh. "You're not the first to see that," he said. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Keep your name out of the book. That's how it finds you." I wanted to ask what he meant, but the signal died before I could. I didn't hear from him again. 3 nights later, I woke to the sound of something moving below the tower. It wasn't an animal. The steps were too slow to even wood creaked under weight, followed by the soft scrape of metal. I grabbed a flashlight and aimed it through the floor grating. Nothing moved in the beam. I stepped outside onto the catwalk. The air was thick with fog. My breath came out white. "Primera K. Lead down Forest Service. Identify yourself." The wind shifted. A shape stood at the edge of the clearing, still and dark against the gray. I saw no face, no color, only the outline of a person looking up at me. I blinked, and it was gone. At dawn, the logbook held a new entry. 4:16 a.m. entry. Acknowledged. The signature beneath was mine, but the pen used was black, not blue. I had no black pens in the tower. I closed the book and pushed it into a drawer under the desk. I stayed awake that next night with the lights on. Around midnight, the radio began to hum. No signal, just a steady vibration that climbed in pitch until it sounded like breath pressed against the microphone. Then a voice came through, flat and dry. "Visibility clear," it said. "Writing complete." The voice was mine. I spoke into the handset. "Who is this?" The response came instantly. "You are." Then, the channel cut. The following morning, I climbed down to the clearing. The ground was covered in frost, even though the air was mild. My boot prints were the only ones there, except for one set of tracks that circled the tower twice before vanishing into the brush. They looked almost human, but ended in narrow points, as if the toes had pressed straight through the soil. I followed them until they faded on the rock. The forest was silent. Not even the jays called. When I returned, I found the drawer open and the logbook resting on the desk. The black pen lay beside it. The page was blank except for one sentence at the bottom. "He signed yours." I tore the page out and threw it into the stove. The flame burned higher than it should have, white instead of orange. The smoke that came from it smelled like wet fur and iron. That evening, the wind began to shake the tower. The sky outside was red with sunset. I checked the horizon, saw nothing, then sat down to write a final report. I planned to leave the next morning, hike to the base camp, and call it an equipment failure. I packed my gear and lay down without turning off the light. Around 4, I woke to the feeling of pressure in my chest, like someone standing beside the cot. I opened my eyes. The door to the deck was wide open. Cold air rolled in. On the desk, the logbook sat open. The page glowed faintly in the lamplight. My hand was resting on it, fingers around the pen. The words beneath were still wet. For 16 a.m. departure confirmed. The signature matched perfectly. I stumbled back, knocking over the chair. The door banged against the frame. Outside, the clearing was full of movement. Not running, not walking. Who's this slow, careful shift of something that knew I was watching? I caught a glimpse of it between the pines. It looked like a man, but the skin was wrong. Stretched too tight, the proportions slightly off. The head turned toward the tower, and even from that distance I could see the face. It was my own. The eyes reflected the lantern light. The thing smiled once and stepped backward into the fog. When the relief crew arrived 2 days later, they found the tower sealed, the windows fogged from inside. The logbook was missing. The radio log stopped at 4:16 a.m. The supervisor said I must have left during a breakdown, maybe walked off trail. But they never found prints beyond the clearing. I don't remember how I got back to town. The doctors said exhaustion, maybe stress. They let me go after a few days. I tried to move on. I took a desk job in Missoula, away from the woods, but the habit stayed. Every morning I wake at 4:16 without fail. On the table beside my bed is a notepad I never use. Each time I look, there is a line written in my own hand. Visibility clear. Shift continues. And beneath it, my name. The first time I heard the scream, I dismissed it as the wind. Up here, in the shadow of Twin Peaks, the wind howls like a banshee. A constant, mournful cry that plays tricks on your ears. I'd been a fire lookout for 3 seasons, stationed in the old Osprey Point Tower, and I thought I'd heard every sound these mountains could make. I was wrong. It was late September, the air crisp with the coming autumn. The aspens a brilliant, fiery gold against the dark pines. The summer haze had vanished, and the peaks stood out in sharp, brutal detail against the endless blue sky. That's when the first call came over the radio. A hiker. Overdue. Not unusual. People underestimate these mountains all the time. But then another call came. And another. A family of 4 vanished from their campsite near Emerald Lake. All their gear was still their tent. Sleeping bags, even a pot of half-cooked chili hanging over a cold fire pit. They were just gone. Search and rescue set up a base camp. Their bright orange jackets a stark contrast to the deep greens and browns of the forest. I watched them through my binoculars, a small army of determined figures combing the trails. Days turned into a week. The mood shifted from hopeful to grim. The nights grew longer, colder, and the sounds started. At first, it was that high-pitched scream, closer this time, echoing off the granite faces of the peaks. It wasn't the wind. It was a sound of pure, abject terror. A sound that made the hairs on my arms stand up and a cold dread snake its way down my spine. Then came the whispers, faint at first, carried on the breeze. They sounded like my name, stretched and distorted, a hollow, rasping sound that seemed to come from all directions at once. I tried to convince myself it was exhaustion, the isolation playing with my mind. I'd spent countless nights alone up here, but this felt different. This felt like I wasn't alone anymore. One evening, as the sun bled out behind the mountains, casting long, skeletal shadows across the valley, I saw it. I was scanning the ridgeline to the east, just below Twin Peaks, when a flicker of movement caught my eye. It was too fast, too fluid to be a deer or an elk. I focused my binoculars, my heart hammering against my ribs. What I saw, it didn't make sense. It was tall, impossibly so, and thin, like a dead tree stripped of its bark. Its limbs were long and angular, moving with a jerky, unnatural grace as it picked its way through the scree. Its color was the pale, sickly white of bone, bleached by the sun. It stopped and turned its head, and even from that distance, I felt a chilling sense of being watched, of Bang Sheen. There was a dark, hollow space where a face should be, a void that seemed to suck in the fading light. I dropped the binoculars, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I didn't sleep that night. Every gust of wind was the sound of it climbing the tower stairs. Every creak of the old wooden structure was the sound of its long fingers testing the door. The next morning, the radio crackled to life. It was Sheriff Miller. His voice was strained, heavy with a fatigue that went beyond lack of sleep. "We're pulling the search," he said, calling it off. There's nothing left to find." I asked him what he meant. There was a long silence on the other end, filled only with static. "We found some tracks," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "They don't match any known animal, and we found things. Scattered. Torn clothing. A backpack." He paused again. "It's not a bear, son. Whatever's out there. It's something else." After he signed off, a profound silence fell over the tower, heavier and more menacing than any storm. The search teams packed up and left, their orange jackets disappearing down the winding mountain road, leaving me truly alone with the peaks and the creeping dread. The beautiful, majestic mountains I had loved now felt like a prison, and I was trapped inside with a monster from the darkest of nightmares. That night, The whispers came back, louder, more insistent. They weren't just calling my name anymore. They were promises. Promises of warmth in the freezing air, of company in the crushing loneliness. They spoke of an end to hunger, annoying, insatiable hunger I hadn't even realized I was feeling. I barricaded the door with my cot and the supply chest, my hands clumsy with fear. The temperature plummeted, and frost began to creep across the inside of the window panes. Through a small, clear patch, I stared out into the oppressive darkness, and then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping, not on the door, but on the glass, 60 feet above the ground. Tap, tap, tap. My blood ran cold. I couldn't bring myself to look up, to see the source of the sound. The tapping stopped, replaced by a low, scraping noise, like fingernails, dragging slowly down the glass. A long, pale finger, more like a gnarled branch, traced a line in the frost, its tip leaving a dark, wet trail. I huddled in the corner, clutching a fire axe. The only weapon I had. The whispers were inside my head now, a chorus of despair and ravenous desire. It knew my fears. It spoke of my family, of my regrets, of every dark thought I'd ever had. It was trying to break me, to hollow me out from the inside. The scraping on the window continued for what felt like an eternity, a slow, patient torture. Then, a new sound, the groaning of stressed metal. I looked up at the trapdoor in the ceiling that led to the exterior catwalk. It was bowing inward, the thick steel bolts straining against an immense, unseen pressure. A fine dust of rust and paint flakes rained down on me. With a horrifying shriek of tearing metal, one of the bolts snapped, then another. I scrambled for the radio, my fingers fumbling with the dial. Mayday, Mayday, Osprey Point Tower. Something's trying to get in. It's on the roof. My voice was a choked, pathetic squeak. The only reply was a burst of static, followed by a faint, distorted whisper that came through the speaker. It was my own voice, twisted into a mocking, hungry rasp, with a final deafening crack. The trapdoor ripped free from its hinges and was thrown aside. For a moment, there was only the black, star-filled sky. Then, a shape descended, unfolding itself into the cramped space of the lookout tower. It was skeletal, its gray, taut skin stretched over a frame that was all wrong, all sharp angles and impossible length. Its head tilted, and from the deep, shadowed pits of its eyes, an ancient, malevolent intelligence stared right through me. A foul stench filled the room, the smell of decay and frozen earth. It opened its mouth, a jagged, lipless tear in its face, and a sound emerged, not a roar, but a dry, rattling hiss that mimicked the whispers, the scream, and the wind all at once. It was the sound of utter starvation. I didn't scream. Primera. Good. And all I could do was stare into the abyss that had come for me. This is my last entry. I'm broadcasting this on a loop. Don't come looking. Don't come to Twin Peaks. The hunger is eternal, and the mountains are its home. It's always watching. Always. The hum of the generator was the only sound left at the county fair, a low thrum against the backdrop of chirping crickets. My name's Leo, and I was part of the cleanup crew. It was a decent gig. Pocket money for sweeping up popcorn and hosing down sticky patches of cotton candy. That night, though, was different. It was the last night, the big teardown, and a strange, heavy stillness had settled over the fairgrounds. As the last of the families trickled out, our supervisor, a gruff old guy named Dale, gave us our assignments. I got stuck with the funhouse. The crooked smile. Te calle d'Italiano. I hated that place. Even during the day, with everyone screaming and laughing inside, it had a weird vibe. The painted smile on the entrance clown felt less like an invitation and more like a warning. I grabbed my broom and a heavy-duty trash bag, pushing open the creaky doors. The air inside was stale, thick with the smell of dust, cheap paint, and something else, ... Something metallic and coppery, like old pennies. The usual funhouse music was off, and the silence was deafening. The only light came from my headlamp, its beam cutting through the darkness and dancing off the distorted mirrors that lined the walls. As I swept, my own reflection warped and twisted around me. I was short, tall, impossibly wide, then unnervingly thin. It was meant to be funny, but alone in the dark, it was just creepy. I tried to focus on the task, sweeping up discarded tickets and half-eaten candy apples, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I turned, my beam would catch a flash of movement in the mirrors, but when I'd spin around, there was nothing there, just my own distorted self, staring back. I told myself it was just my tired mind playing tricks on me. 10 hours of manual labor can do that to a person. I moved deeper into the funhouse, towards the final hall of mirrors. This was the main attraction, a labyrinth of reflective glass designed to get you completely lost. It was a nightmare to clean. As I started sweeping in the mirror maze, I heard a sound, a soft, wet, scraping noise. It was coming from deeper within the maze. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small and shaky. "Dale." "Is that you?" The scraping stopped. Silence. My heart started pounding against my ribs. It was probably just a rat. This place was crawling with them. I took a deep breath and continued my work, trying to ignore the prickling sensation on the back of my neck. Then I heard it again, closer this time. Scrape. Drag. Scrape. It sounded heavy, like something being pulled across the wooden floor. I froze. Headlamp beam pointed into the endless reflections. I saw myself 1,000 times, 1,000 versions of a scared kid holding a broom. And then, in one of the reflections far down the corridor, I saw something else. It was standing behind one of my reflections, peeking over its shoulder. It was tall and gaunt, its limbs bent at angles that weren't natural. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over its bones, like old leather. But the worst part was its face. It had a face, but it wasn't finished. The features were smudged and indistinct, except for the eyes. The eyes were dark, hollow pits that seemed to absorb the light from my headlamp. And it was smiling, a wide, jagged gash of a smile, filled with too many teeth. I stumbled back, dropping my broom with a clatter that echoed through the maze. My mind was screaming, but no sound came out. It couldn't be real. It was just a trick of the mirrors, a distortion. But then, it moved. Not the reflection, but the thing itself. It took a step forward, its joints cracking audibly. The scraping sound started again, and I realized it was the sound of its fingernails, long and yellowed, dragging against the floor. I turned and ran. I didn't care which way I was going. I just ran, blindly, bouncing off mirrors, my own terrified face flashing past me again and again. The scraping sound was right behind me, getting faster. I could hear a low, guttural breathing now, a wet, ragged sound that made my stomach clench. In my panic, I saw it again. It was in front of me, blocking the path, but it wasn't the same. This time, it looked different. It was shorter, stockier. It was wearing a dirty work shirt and a baseball cap. It was Dale, but his eyes were wrong. They were the same black, empty pits, and that same horrifying smile was stretched across his face. He raised a hand, and his fingers elongated, stretching into claws. "Leaving so soon, kid," a voice rasped. It was Dale's voice, but it was twisted, layered with a dry, whispering hiss that wasn't human. I screamed, a raw, primal sound, and dodged to the side, crashing through a section of mirrors that I knew led to a maintenance exit. The glass shattered, cutting my arms, but I didn't feel it. I scrambled through the opening and burst out into the cool night air. I didn't stop running. I ran past the Ferris wheel, past the food stalls, past everything. I didn't look back until I reached the chain link fence at the edge of the fairgrounds. I vaulted over it, tearing my jeans, and kept running until the colored lights of the fair were just a faint glow in the distance. I never went back for my last paycheck. I never told anyone what I saw. Who would believe me? They'd say I was tired, or that I'd imagined it. But I know what I saw. Sometimes, when I'm getting ready in the morning, I catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror, and for a split second, just out of the corner of my eye, I see it. A flicker of a smile that isn't my own. A dark, jagged grin that reminds me of the funhouse. Of the thing that wore our supervisor's skin. I walked away from the crooked smile that night, but a part of it never let me go. Because I know, somewhere out there, it's still smiling. Thanks for tuning into my story tonight. If you felt that chill run down your spine, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there, and always be careful what you see in the reflections. You never know who or what might be smiling back.